The glass fell from Robert Thompson's hand and broke on the floor when Victoria said those words at the wedding party. Something big just happened. Why did everyone stop and stare at Robert? What did Victoria say that shocked him so much? This is the family embarrassment we're stuck with, Victoria told her rich parents with a fake smile. Her hand touched Robert's shoulder for just a second. All 200 people at the wedding stopped what they were doing to look at the 55-year-old man in the blue suit. Robert's face turned white like paper. If you're watching this, please subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Let me tell you how we got here. Because this story is really interesting. My name is Robert Thompson, but most people call me Tomp. I have spent 15 years being quiet about my money. I did this on purpose, so people would not notice me. My son Denial had been going out with Victoria for 8 months. I met her only 2 times before the wedding. At those dinners, she asked me questions about my simple life. She asked if I needed help with money as I get older. The wedding was very fancy. I will say that. The Mitchell family house was on 50 acres of green grass in Pennsylvania. It had a church that could hold 300 people and gardens that cost a lot of money. Victoria walked down the aisle in a dress that cost more than most people make in months. Denial looked happier than he had since his mom died. I wore a blue dress shirt from a regular store with my grandfather's watch. Nothing fancy, nothing to make people look at me. I learned long ago that to stay private, you need to look like what people expect. A man living quietly on his late wife's money. The wedding was pretty even, though Victoria's mom, Carol, looked at me like I did not belong. The party after the wedding was where things got bad. The Mitchells spent a lot of money. They had ice statues, music from 12 musicians, and flowers everywhere. I sat at a small table watching Denial dance with his new wife, when Victoria came with her parents. "Mom and Dad," she said with a sweet voice that made me feel sick, "I want you to meet Denial's father." Then she said the words that changed everything. Robert Mitchell's glass stopped halfway to his mouth. He looked at me with eyes that said he knew who I was. "Robert Thompson," he whispered. Suddenly I was not invisible anymore. "Wait, aren't you the person from the Mitchell Enterprises meeting? 3 years ago? Aren't you the secret buyer who bought my company?" Robert Mitchell's words cut through the noise like a knife. Victoria's face lost all color as she looked at her dad and me. Carol Mitchell's diamond bracelet caught the light as her hand went to her neck. Most people do not know what real rich looks like. They think it means fancy cars and expensive clothes. What they do not expect is a man in a simple suit who shops at normal stores and drives a good but not fancy car. That is what I have been for 15 years. It started with my wife Elizabeth's idea. She made something that helped phone batteries last longer. We were both engineers working in California in the early 2000s. When Elizabeth made her battery system in 2010, we thought we might make enough money to live comfortably. We did not know we had a gold mine. The patent sold for $22 million in 2012. Denial was 24 then. He had just finished school with a marketing degree and wanted to build his own job. Elizabeth and I made a choice that day that changed the next 13 years. We told Denial we got a good amount of money, enough to be comfortable but not rich. He never questioned it. He probably thought it was a few $1,000,000. What Denial did not know was that $22 million was just the start. Elizabeth and I took that money and started investing it carefully. First, we bought safe company stocks. Then, as we learned more, we bought growing companies. We bought houses in new areas, and tech companies that had good ideas. Elizabeth was good at finding good deals before other people knew about them. By the time she died 5 years ago in 2020, our money was worth over $800 million. $800 million, $800 million, $800 million. That is the same amount I later used to buy Mitchell Enterprises 2 years after Elizabeth died. The funny part was this. While Victoria gave me worried looks and asked if I needed help with my money, I was the secret person who saved her dad's company. Her dad had almost ruined the company by borrowing too much money. He had to sell to what he thought was a big company. That big company was really me. I bought Mitchell Enterprises not because I was mean, but because the company was good under the bad management. The company had good customers and good workers. If someone ran it right, it was doing well again now. The man who was just called a family embarrassment had been living off my business choices for 3 years. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, looking at John. "I think you have me confused with someone else," but we both knew he did not. I could see he remembered that meeting where I sat quietly while my lawyers talked. He barely noticed me, then thinking I was just a husband there for show. Now as Victoria looked at us with worry, I knew my secret was about to come out. The next morning I sat in my apartment drinking coffee. Denial paced back and forth like a wild animal in a cage. He called me at 7 in the morning wanting answers I was not ready to give. I could not sleep after the party. My mind kept seeing John Mitchell's face and the panic in Victoria's eyes. "Dad, you have to help me understand what happened last night," Denial said, running his hands through his hair like he did when he was a kid. "John pulled me aside after you left and asked hard questions about Mom's patents and your money stuff. I left quietly after John's surprise, saying I was tired. The truth was I needed time to think. 15 years of keeping my money secret broke in one moment, and I did not know what to do. Denial got his strong feelings from Elizabeth, but he showed them differently. Where Elizabeth was careful and planned ahead, Denial was direct and felt things strongly. What kind of questions, I asked, though I knew. He wanted to know about Mom's technology patents, about whether you were part of big business deals, about our family's real money situation. Denial stopped walking and looked at me with the serious brown eyes he got from Elizabeth. "Dad, he seemed to think you were some kind of big money person." It was weird. The coffee tasted bad suddenly. This was the talk I had been both waiting for and afraid of. Denial built his job as a marketing boss by working hard and being good. He earned his place at a good company, bought his house by saving carefully, and lived within his means because he believed those were the values Elizabeth and I taught him. How could I explain that while he worked 60 hours a week to get better jobs? I could have bought his whole company without trying hard while he saved for his house down payment. I was managing money worth more than most small towns. "Denial, sit down," I said gently. "We need to talk." But before I could say more, my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Robert, I think we should have lunch today. There are some things Denial and I would like to talk about with you." I showed Denial the message. His face changed from confused to worried. "What do you think she wants to talk about?" I had a good idea. Victoria Mitchell was not the kind of person to let mysteries stay mysteries, especially when money might be involved. She probably spent the whole night asking her dad about his guesses. Now she was ready to look harder. The question was, how much had John really figured out from that short meeting 3 years ago? I think I said carefully, "Your wife is smarter than we thought." Denial's phone rang. Victoria's name showed on the screen. He answered right away, and I could hear her voice from across the room, bright and fake happy. "Denial, honey, I was hoping we could all have lunch together today. There are some family things I'd love to talk about with your father, now that we're family." When he hung up, Denial looked at me like he did as a teenager when he thought I knew more about him breaking rules than I let on. "Dad, is there something you need to tell me about our family's money?" Outside my apartment window, I watched people going to work like normal. People with simple problems about work deadlines. Dad, I wished I had their simple life, their normal worries. That seemed easy compared to mine. Everything I said, finally. "I need to tell you everything." Victoria arrived at the restaurant 45 minutes early, already sitting at a corner table when Denial and I walked in. She picked the fanciest place in town, I noticed. She took the seat where she could see the whole room. Her blonde hair looked perfect in the afternoon sun. She wore a designer suit I recognized from a magazine. "Robert, Denial, thank you so much for meeting me," she said, standing up to hug us both. Her smile was bright, but I saw the calculating look in her green eyes as she checked my simple black suit and plain jewelry. I ordered us a nice bottle of wine to celebrate being family. The wine cost more than most people spend on food in a month. Clearly Victoria was showing what she expected from this talk. "This is lovely, dear," I said, sitting down, though maybe too fancy for a normal family lunch. "Oh, I don't think anything about our family is normal anymore," she replied, her smile never changing. "I spent last night talking with Daddy about his business, and he told me interesting stories about big business deals and secret buyers." Denial looked between us, clearly feeling things he did not understand. "Victoria, what does this have to do with lunch?" She ignored him, focusing only on me. "You know, Robert, I studied business at Wharton. I find business money very interesting, especially tricky money structures. Daddy said when Mitchell Enterprises was sold, the buyer was very quiet. I sipped my wine and waited. Let her make the first real move. The interesting thing about quiet buyers," she continued, "is they often have good reasons to stay hidden, usually because they have a lot of money they do not want people to know about." "That sounds reasonable," I said calmly. Victoria leaned forward a little, her voice like someone telling a secret. "Daddy said the person at the business meeting was quiet, elegant, and let lawyers do the talking. But he remembered thinking that person looked like someone who makes big decisions. Denial was staring at me now, pieces starting to fit in his mind. Dad, before I could answer, Victoria took out her phone and showed us a picture. It was a news story from 3 years ago about Mitchell Enterprises being sold. In the picture, lawyers and business people were there. A man in a blue suit could be seen, but his face was hard to see. The picture is not great, Victoria said, talking like it was normal, but the man's way of standing, his height, even how he holds his bag. It's very like yours. Robert, we were all quiet as Denial looked at the picture. He was starting to understand. I had to respect Victoria's hard work, even as I felt my secret starting to come apart. That's quite a coincidence, I said finally. Isn't it? Victoria's smile had a sharp edge now. Of course, coincidences happen all the time, like how my family's money problems started right when someone paid $800 million for Daddy's company, or how that same secret buyer disappeared after the sale, almost like they wanted to stay hidden. Denial put down his wine glass with shaky hands. Dad, please tell me you're not who she thinks you are. Robert knows a secret that could change everything. Will he finally tell the truth, or will he stay quiet to protect his son? I looked at my son, the young man I raised, to be honest and do the right thing. I realized 15 years of lying to protect him had caught up with me. Denial, there are some things about your mom's patents and our money that I never explained to you. Victoria's victory showed on her face, but as I watched her enjoy what she thought was her big win, I wondered if she knew what she had started. 3 days later, I sat in my money advisor's office downtown. Charles Peterson looked at the papers I asked for. The lunch with Denial and Victoria ended with my son walking out after I told him the truth. His new wife made hints about family money plans and shared jobs. Now I needed to know exactly where I stood. Robert, I have to say, this is not normal, Charles said, fixing his glasses as he looked at the Mitchell family money report on his wooden desk. Why do you suddenly care about your daughter-in-law's family money? I called Charles the morning after our bad lunch. I asked for a full look at the Mitchell family's money situation. What I learned was more complicated than I thought, because I did not know when I bought Mitchell Enterprises that I was buying my future daughter-in-law's inheritance. Charles's eyebrows went up. Your daughter-in-law, the one who just married Denial. When I nodded, he made a low whistle sound. That's complicated. Tell me something I don't know. He pulled up files on his computer, checking data I asked for. Okay, let's go through this step by step. In 2021, Mitchell Enterprises had trouble paying back loans they took in 2019. John Mitchell borrowed too much money, buying smaller companies. When the economy got bad, they could not pay their debts. I remembered that deal well. It was one of my better investments. I bought a good company cheap because it had money problems for a short time. What did the family think would happen? Charles asked. According to the money records we have, Victoria Mitchell had been getting ready to take over her dad's company. She worked there summers in college, got her MBA studying family business, and told people she would run the company after a short time. The pieces fit together in a bad way. So when I bought the company and brought in new managers, I took away her expected job. More than that, you took away what she thought was hers. Charles pulled up another paper. Here's where it gets interesting. I've been watching quiet questions about your money activities. Someone has been asking about secret companies, business deals, and hidden buyers. My stomach felt tight. What kind of questions? Professional questions, not just wondering. The kind that shows someone knows business and might have lawyer help. He turned his computer to me. Robert, I think your daughter-in-law hired a private detective. The problem hit me right away. 15 years of careful legal work and staying hidden could be undone by someone with enough reason and resources. How safe are we? That depends on how deep they go and what they want to do with what they find. Charles's face was serious. Your privacy protections are good but not perfect. A strong investigation with lawyer help could eventually find out it was you. I thought about Victoria's actions at lunch, how she showed her discoveries like a chess player making a winning move. What would you suggest? Honestly, get ahead of this. If she is making a case for money help or family jobs, it's better to control the story than have it come out badly. He leaned back thinking, but Robert, there's something else you need to think about. If this becomes public, it won't just affect you. Denial's job could be hurt if people think his success was because of family money he did not know about. I had not thought about that. Denial's reputation in marketing was built on his own work. If people found out his mom was a big investor, they might question every promotion he got, every client he worked with. The funny part was bitter. I hid my money to protect him. Now that secret might hurt everything he worked for. There's one more thing, Charles continued, pulling up a last paper. The Mitchell family's money situation is worse than it looks. They have been keeping their lifestyle with credit and loans, probably thinking John would find another business chance, or Victoria would marry someone rich, and now she thinks she did. Exactly. But Robert, if they are planning to ask for money help or to be part of your investments, you need to be ready for what that might look like. This isn't going to be a simple family talk anymore. As I left Charles's office, I realized I faced the same choice. Elizabeth and I made 15 years ago, but now the stakes were higher. This time, I would not just be protecting my son's independence. I would be fighting to keep everything I built from being used against my family. That evening, I did something I had not done in months. I opened a bottle of good wine Elizabeth and I saved for special times, poured myself a big glass, and spread 15 years of money records on my dining table. Robert is about to make a big move. What will he do now that his secret is out? If Victoria wanted to play detective, she was about to find out she picked the wrong person to mess with. The numbers told a story of patience and smart choices I had almost forgotten. Elizabeth and I did not just get lucky with her patent sale. We were careful researching every investment, spreading money out carefully, and putting profits into new chances. That first 22 million grew to 50 million by 2015, then to 200 million by 2018. By the time Elizabeth died, we were worth over 800 million, and I kept growing it. More importantly, I had been quietly building something bigger than just money. I owned big parts of 12 different companies, had deals for 17 different technologies, and had money in everything from clean energy to medicine. I was not just rich. I was connected to new ideas in ways even Charles did not fully understand. My phone buzzed with a text from Denial. Dad, Victoria and I would like to come over tomorrow evening. She has some ideas about how our family should handle this new information. I almost laughed. Victoria had ideas. Did she? I could guess what those ideas might be. Probably something about trust funds and family meetings and more team approach to money choices. What she did not know yet was that I had been managing expectations and protecting my interests longer than she had been working in business. I pulled up the legal papers Charles gave me about the Mitchell family's money. Their situation was worse than I first thought. Their house was borrowed against at 80% of its value. Their money accounts had been used up to keep their lifestyle, and they had big credit problems because John thought he would make money from business deals. John Mitchell thought he retired comfortably on the money from selling his company, but the truth was more complicated. Most of his retirement money came from consulting jobs and board positions I set up through Mitchell Enterprises' new management. His comfortable life depended more on my ownership than he knew, but that was just the start. I opened my laptop and started looking at Victoria's recent actions. If she hired a private detective, there would be signs, money records, communication patterns, changes in her daily life that showed she was making a case for something. What I found was interesting and worrying. Victoria had indeed hired a private detective company that finds hidden money. She had also talked to a lawyer who handles family money fights. Most important, she opened several new credit accounts in the past month, probably paying for her investigation with the hope it would pay off big. She did not marry my son for love. She married him as a money plant. The wine made me think deep thoughts, or maybe just honest with myself for the first time in years. I spent 15 years being the quiet widower, happy to let people think I lived simply while I quietly built something big. But Victoria's little show at the wedding party changed something important. I was tired of being underestimated more than tired. I was done. Tomorrow, when Denial brought his wife to talk about her ideas for our family's money future, I was going to give them both a lesson in exactly who they decided to investigate. Because Robert Thompson, the careful investor, was about to become Robert Thompson, the strong opponent, and I had 15 years of experience winning games other people did not even know they were playing. Denial arrived at my apartment the next evening with Victoria, both acting like diplomats at a hard meeting. I had prepared for their visit carefully, putting out simple cheese and fruit and opening a medium-priced bottle of wine. Nothing that would show the real resources I had. Dad, thank you for agreeing to sit down with us. Denial began, his voice careful, like someone walking through a dangerous area. I know the last few days have been complicated. Victoria dressed for the occasion in a business suit. Her MBA training showed in the folder she carried, and how she sat in my chair. Robert, I want to start by saying everything we talk about tonight, stays in the family. We're all on the same side here. I almost smiled at her assumption. Of course, dear. What did you want to talk about? She opened her folder, showing several papers she clearly prepared carefully. Well, I've been thinking about our lunch talk, and I realize we started wrong. What I'd like to propose is a more team approach to family money planning. Team, how Denial moved uncomfortably next to her, clearly not sure where this was going. Victoria has some ideas about how we might set things up to help everyone. The thing is, Victoria continued, her voice like someone giving a business talk. Family money works best when it's managed smartly across generations. Denial and I have been talking about how we might create a system that protects your privacy while giving more openness for family planning. There it was, the real reason for this meeting. I sipped my wine and waited for her to continue. We were thinking about making a family foundation, something that would let us give to charity while also giving tax benefits and money coordination. She pulled out what looked like a first legal paper. I've talked to a lawyer who knows about family money management. The nerve was amazing. She found out I had money, and right away started planning how to get to it, complete with lawyer talks and formal papers. That sounds very well planned. The foundation would be run by a family board of trustees. She continued excitedly. You mean Denial eventually any kids we might have. It would give us all a say in big money choices, while keeping proper oversight. Denial was staring at the papers she made, looking overwhelmed. Victoria, maybe we should slow down here. This is a lot to handle. Actually, Denial, I think your wife put a lot of thought into this proposal. I said calmly, tell me, Victoria, what kind of first money did you think about? For this foundation, her eyes got bright at what she thought was interest. Well, that would depend on how big the charity work we wanted to do. I was thinking maybe we'd start with something big enough to make a difference. Perhaps 50 or 60 million to be taken seriously in the charity world. 50 or 60 million as a start from a woman who called me a family embarrassment less than a week ago, and the board system you mentioned. I continued like it was normal. How would voting work? I think equal say makes the most sense, she replied. Confidently, 3 trustees, 3 votes. Very fair. I put down my wine glass and looked right at her. Victoria, can I ask you something, honestly? Of course. Do you love my son? The question clearly surprised her. She looked at Denial, then back at me. What kind of question is that? Simple one. Do you love Denial for who he is, or do you love what you think? Being married to him might give you. The room got very quiet. Denial looked between us with growing worry, and Victoria's calm face started to crack. I think that's not fair to say about our relationship, she said finally. Is it? I stood up and walked to my bookshelf, pulling out a folder I made. Because I have some information that might help clear things up. I sat back down and opened the folder showing the report Charles made on Victoria's recent activities. Her face went pale as she recognized some of the papers. This is a record of your talks with Sterling Investigations over the past 2 weeks. I said calmly, it seems you hired them to look into company ownership and find hidden buyers. Very expensive, from what I can see. Denial stared at his wife with growing disbelief. Victoria, you hired private detectives. It's not what it sounds like, she said fast. I was just trying to understand our family's money situation better. You were making a case, I corrected. These records show you also talked to Clark & Associates, a law firm that handles family money fights and trust problems. I pulled out another paper. This is interesting. You opened 3 new credit accounts in the past month, borrowing against your expected family money help. That's quite an assumption to make. Victoria was scrambling now, her careful calm completely gone. Robert, you have to understand I was just trying to protect our family's interests. Whose interests exactly? I asked because according to this money report, Charles' major family situation is much worse than you've been showing. I spread more papers on the coffee table. Your parents' house is borrowed against at nearly 80% of value. Their money accounts have been used up to keep their lifestyle since your dad lost Mitchell Enterprises. Most of their current money comes from consulting jobs I set up through the company's new management. Denial was reading the papers, his face going from confused to angry to heartbroken. Dad, how do you know all this? Because Denial, when someone tries to investigate me, I investigate them back. And what I found is that your wife's family has been living on borrowed time and borrowed money for the past 3 years. Victoria found her voice, but it was shaky now. That doesn't change the fact that we're family now, that we should work together instead of against each other. You're absolutely right, I said, standing up and walking to my window. We should work together. The question is, what kind of work did you have in mind? I turned back to face them both, because here's what I think happened. You found out I have money, and you right away started planning how to get to it. Not how to add to it, not how to help manage it, but how to change it, so you would control spending choices. That's not fair, Victoria protested. Isn't it? I pulled out one more paper from my folder. This is a recording of a phone call you had with your college friend 3 weeks before you met Denial. In it you specifically say you're tired of dating men who can't give financial safety, and you're looking for someone from a stable family with good long-term chances. Victoria thought she was in control, but now she sees Robert knows everything. How will she react when her lies are all out in the open? The silence that followed was complete. Denial was staring at his wife like he never saw her before, and Victoria looked like she was figuring out how fast she could leave this talk. Denial. I said gently, I think you need to ask yourself if the woman you married is the person you thought she was. But even as I said it, I realized this fight was just the start. Victoria Mitchell was not the kind to give up easily, and I had just shown her exactly how much was at stake. If she had been smart before, she was about to become dangerous. What happens now? Denial asked quietly. I looked at my son, the man I raised to be honest and work hard, and made a choice that would change all our lives. Now we find out what everyone is really made of. The next 2 weeks passed, in careful quiet. Denial moved back to his apartment for a while, telling me he needed time to think about everything and figure out what was real. Victoria had stormed out of my apartment that night, but not before making it clear she thought our talk was a war declaration. She turned out to be more dangerous than I thought. The first sign of trouble came when Charles Peterson called me on a Friday morning, his voice tight with worry. Robert, we have a problem. Someone has been asking the SEC about your money structures. Professional questions suggesting they're building a case for some kind of rule breaking. I felt my stomach drop. What kind of rule breaking? Not paying to show who really owns companies possible. Secret trading around some of your deals. Questions about whether your secret companies reported their activities right. He paused. Robert, this isn't just wondering anymore. Someone is trying to build a legal case against you. I knew exactly who that someone was. How serious is this? It depends on what they find and what they want to do. Your structures are legal, but tricky money setups can look bad to rule makers who don't get the whole picture. If they file a formal FOMO, you could face months or years of investigation, even if you are finally cleared. The problems were huge. Not just the legal costs and time, but the attention that would destroy the privacy I kept for 15 years. What would you suggest? Honestly, end this before it gets worse. Whatever family fight started this investigation needs to be fixed fast, because rule makers tend to look beyond the first complaint. I hung up and sat in my apartment thinking through my choices. Victoria had gone from private detective to possible legal war, probably hoping to force me into a deal rather than risk public attention. It was actually a smart move, if not very nice. My phone rang. Denial's name showed on the screen. Dad, we need to talk. Something's happened. He arrived an hour later, looking worn out and older than his 32 years. Victoria filed for separation, he said right away. Her lawyer says she's worried about possible money problems from hidden family assets. I almost respected her thoroughness. By filing for separation, she was protecting herself legally while getting ready for a possible divorce deal. I'm sorry, Denial. Are you? He looked at me with eyes that had more pain than anger, because it feels like you planned this whole thing. Like you wanted my marriage to fail so you could prove a point about her reasons. By hurting her family's money, safety by investigating her like she was a criminal. He shook his head. Dad, I don't even know who you are anymore. That hurt, but I kept going. I'm the same person who raised you to value honesty and doing right. The same person who wanted you to succeed by your own work, not family money. And look how that turned out. He said bitterly, my wife is leaving me. Her family's money situation is falling apart. And now I find out my dad is some kind of business boss who's been lying to me for 15 years. I wanted to reach for him to comfort him like I did when he was a kid with a scraped knee or a broken toy, but the space between us felt too big. Denial, there's something else you need to know. Victoria has filed complaints with government rulemakers about my money activities. She's trying to force me into a public legal fight. He stared at me. What does that mean? It means this isn't over. It's just starting. And I need you to decide if you're going to stand with me or let her destroy everything I built to protect our family. The quiet stretched between us. Finally, Denial looked up at me with something that might have been the start of understanding. What do you need me to do? The meeting happened in Charles Peterson's conference room the next Monday. There were me, Denial, Victoria, her lawyer Marcus Webb, and her parents John and Carol Mitchell. The air was so tense, you could cut it with a knife. Let's be clear about why we're here. Marcus Webb began fixing his expensive suit as he put papers on the wooden table. My client found out Mrs. Thompson has been hiding big money while letting her son's wife's family have money problems. This suggests either a pattern of lying or possible money wrongdoing that needs investigation. Charles Peterson, sitting next to me, answered calmly. Mr. Webb, Mrs. Thompson's money activities are completely legal and properly reported. Your client's recent rule complaints seem to be from personal problems, not real concerns. Victoria leaned forward, her voice controlled. This isn't about personal problems. This is about family duty and being open. Robert has been controlling people's lives while pretending to be someone he's not. I finally spoke. Victoria, I've never controlled anyone. I invested in companies that were not doing well and made them better. I kept my privacy because I liked being not in the spotlight. Neither of those things is illegal or wrong. You bought my father's company and let him think he failed as a businessman. She shot back. Your father did fail as a businessman, I replied calmly. I saved his company and protected his workers' jobs. Under his management, Mitchell Enterprises would have been gone within months. John Mitchell, who had been quiet until now, cleared his throat. Robert, I appreciate what you did for the company, but you can't say you've been smart about hiding your part in our family's matters. Smart, yes. Lying, no. You never asked about my money activities, and I didn't have to tell you. Marcus Webb pulled out a thick folder. Robert, we have proof you've used your money to control many situations with my client's family. The consulting fees to Mr. Mitchell, the timing of business choices affecting their money, safety, even the investigation into my client's personal activities. Proof of what exactly, Charles asked. Of a pattern of control meant to keep power over this family's money future. I looked around the table at these people who thought they knew the game they were playing. Mr. Webb, let me be clear. I don't control your client's family. I don't owe them money. I don't owe them explanations. And I certainly don't owe them access to my money. But you do owe your son honesty, Victoria jumped in. And you owe your daughter-in-law basic respect. Respect, I felt something cold inside. You called me a family embarrassment at your wedding. You hired detectives to look into my private life. You filed rule complaints to try to force me into a money deal. And now you want to tell me about respect. The silence that followed was deafening. Denial, who had been quiet the whole meeting, finally spoke. What do you want, Victoria? What would it take to end this? She looked at her lawyer, then right at me. I want a formal family money agreement. Something that sets clear expectations and jobs for all people. What kind of jobs, I asked. Marcus Webb pulled out another paper. We're suggesting a family trust with shared control and set giving rules. Robert would put a big part of his money into the trust, which would be run by a family board for the good of all members. I almost laughed at the nerve. You want me to put my money into a trust run by a group that includes people who've been investigating me and filing complaints against me. We want a fair deal that protects everyone's interests. Victoria said. I stood up and walked to the conference room window, looking down at the street where people were living normal lives, not knowing about the money fight happening 20 floors above them. I have a counteroffer, I said finally. I turned back to face the room. Victoria, you have 72 hours to take back all rule complaints and stop all investigation activities. In return, I'll give a deal that lets you and your parents keep your current lifestyle without me bothering you. What kind of deal? Marcus Webb asked suspiciously. $5 million. One-time payment. In exchange, you signed papers never to contact my son or me again. The room went completely quiet. Denial stared at me in shock. Dad, you can't be serious. But I was completely serious. I just offered to pay $5 million to remove bad people from our lives for good. And from the looks around the table, everyone was starting to understand how serious I was about protecting what mattered to me. 5 million, Victoria repeated slowly, like she was testing the words to never contact denial again. That's right, Marcus Webb was already figuring it out. I could see it in his eyes. 5 million in hand was more than his client could win in any legal fight, and it came without years of expensive court battles. Miss Thompson, that's a generous offer, but it seems made to break up a marriage, not fix a family problem. Mr. Webb, the marriage was already broken. I'm just offering to pay for a clean end instead of a messy one. Denial stood up suddenly. Dad, stop. Both of you just stop. He looked around the room with total disgust. This is crazy. We're sitting here talking about the price of my marriage like it's a business deal. Isn't that exactly what it's been? I asked gently. He turned to Victoria, his voice full of pain that hurt my heart. Victoria, I need you to answer something honestly. Did you marry me because you loved me or because you thought I came from money? The quiet lasted almost a full minute. Denial? That's not a fair question, she said finally. That's the only question that matters. I watched my son's face as he waited for an answer that never came. In that quiet 15 years of careful parenting choices, money, hiding, and protective secrets came together in one clear moment. 5 million, I repeated, looking right at Victoria. Plus, I arranged for your parents to keep their house and your dad to keep his consulting job at Mitchell Enterprises. You sign the papers and walk away from my family. And if I say no, I smiled. And for the first time in this whole thing, it was completely real. Then you get nothing. Your parents lose their house. Your dad loses his income. And you spend the next several years in legal fights that will cost you more than you could ever hope to win. Marcus Webb was whispering fast, in Victoria's ear, probably explaining the math of the situation. 5 million now, versus years of expensive court battles with no sure win. I need time to think about this, Victoria said. You have until noon tomorrow. After that, the offer ends, and you deal with the results of the complaints you filed. As the meeting ended, Denial stayed behind while the others left. Dad, did you really just buy my freedom from my wife? No, son. I just gave you the information you needed to make your own choice. He was quiet for a long time. What if she takes the money? Then you'll know exactly who she was, and you can move forward with your life. And if she doesn't, then you'll still know who she was. And I'll make sure she regrets trying to mess with our family. Denial looked at me with something that might have been respect mixed with fear. When did you become so tough? I thought about the question seriously. I think I always was, Denial. I just never had a reason to show it before. The next morning at 11:47 a.m., Marcus Webb called Charles Peterson to accept the deal offer. By 5 p.m., the papers were signed and the money sent. Victoria took the $5 million and disappeared from our lives as completely as if she had never existed. Denial filed for divorce, the next week saying the marriage could not be fixed. 6 months later, he called me on a Sunday evening. Dad, I met someone. Her name is Rebecca. She's a teacher, and she has no idea you're rich. How do you know? Because when I told her my father lived in a nice apartment and drove a good car, she said that sounded like the kind of man who had his priorities straight. I smiled, feeling something relax in my chest that had been tight for years. She sounds perfect. When do I get to meet her? Next Sunday. But Dad, when we have dinner, can you just be the man who raised me to work hard and treat people with respect? Can you leave the business boss at home? I laughed, realizing that after 15 years of hiding who I was, I had finally learned the difference between being invisible and being private. Of course, son. But if she turns out to be looking into our family finances, all bets are off. Deal, he said, and I could hear him smiling through the phone. For the first time in months, the future looked exactly as bright as I had always planned. It would be. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your story matters. For us,